Let's talk about a hypothetical projects folder. So this doesn't need to be a folder on your computer. It doesn't even need to be a folder. This is just a organizational tool. In a lot of people's cases, they'll use a map of content or MOC to group things together that's related to each other. But I think the folder structure conveys this message quite simplistically. So within your projects folder, you have Project Y, Project X, Project Z. And within these projects, you're going to have a bunch of different groupings or folders. So one could be attachments, one could be PowerPoint slide decks that you might find of interest to this project. Another one might be just people that you want to keep tabs on or stakeholders related to the meetings that you would have. But there's going to be a folder called meetings. So this could be Teams meetings, physical meetings, phone calls, anything that you want to capture information from where people come together and try to solve a problem. That is meeting notes. So how do we take effective meeting notes? Generally, you want to capture all the important bits of information that gets distributed in a meeting, but it's not always that simple. You sometimes sit in a meeting and information gets lost because nobody captures it effectively. Templates provide you a way to capture the notes more effectively. You already have a structure and you basically just need to fill it in with bullet points or full sentences. It provides a map of sorts in order for you to navigate the information that's being conveyed in the meeting. So if we zoom in on the meeting note, you generally have something like this. A meeting note, you need to have some important information in order to retrieve this note in the future. And in my personal experience, I found that people do not take meeting notes effectively. There sometimes is no date attached. There is no project that it relates to or sub-project or task that it relates to. The previous meeting that led up to this meeting is also not there. There's no summary. There's no meeting prep notes, meeting notes, follow-ups within a month. That information is gone if it was not carried out. So meeting note templates. This is what we're talking about through a template. It's a structure, a blueprint for you to fill in. You start with the meeting date, project, participants, previous meeting. You fill this in before the meeting starts, and then you have your meeting prep. So this would be, I need to read through a specific document, or I need to talk to this person, follow up to get information that's going to be valuable for the upcoming meeting. And then the meeting notes and follow up. This is for during and after the meeting. So in the meeting, we fill in the structure. So meeting date, that specific date. Project, Project X. Participants, Johnny, Mommy, Daddy. Previous meeting, you have the meeting or the email or the conversation that led up to this meeting. We have the meeting prep and there's little scribbles for our meeting prep, meeting notes, follow up. And these checklists is also something we want to capture in our project's map of content. Before we continue, this meeting date, 2022-12-04. This is something we want to automate. As soon as you create the note, you want to create the date. We don't want to fill in the name more than once. Obviously, you have to fill in some manual inputs in order to describe what meeting this is about. I like to add the date before the meeting name. Participant is going to be a manual entry, but you can create a template that if you know each and every meeting of this type will have the same participants, you can automatically fill in the template as well. And previous meetings, you're just going to link to the previous meeting. So if you go to the right, what do we want? We want consistency. So after a while, our Project X will look like this. So Project X, we have our meetings folder and there could be hundreds of meeting notes. And we want to be able to have a system that we can easily find past notes. We think chronologically. If you read something interesting that you want to share with a close family member, you think in chronological order. I read this somewhere last week. Then you have a little time frame that you can go look for that note. it's within the previous week. You go through your notes, like you have 5 days that you have to go through, you'll probably find it in 5 minutes. But if you don't have the metadata, which is the date that we filled in the previous meetings, the updated dates and things like that, you won't be able to find those notes. So now that we are sold on the idea that templates matter, that templates has value, and that templates can reduce manual errors and just simplify your life in general in the future, we can talk about how to get it up and running in Obsidian. So you have 2 options. Option 1 is to use Obsidian's default plugin that comes as a standard installation with your Obsidian when you first install it. And you can see when you go to settings, you go to core plugins, you can see templates are there. We have a templates folder location, date format, time format. So each country would have their own convention. You would have your own convention that you can specify here. And you have a template folder location. This template folder location is just the folder that Obsidian is going to use whenever you want to call up a template. It's going to go to or navigate to that folder, and you can specify, hey, in this folder, I want the cooking template. And then you click on it, and that's how Obsidian communicates with you when you want to insert a template. The second option, which we are going to go through, and we're going to go through installation of this community plugin. So Templater is just the default plugin, but on steroids. It can do everything the default Obsidian plugin can do, but so much more. Nicole had a short article on what functionality Templater can give you. I'll put a link in the description to that short article. We will not be going over them. There's a lot of resources where you can see the extra functionality of Templater versus the default plugin, but that is for you to go and play around with. We are just going to get into it. We're going to learn by doing. And all that you need to do is follow along. And if in the future you are going to use some of the other functionality of Templater, you are or will be already set up to do so. So just think of this as an exercise to not have a headache in the future. All right, let's get into actually installing the plugin. To install Templater, you're going to go to Settings. We are going to go to Community Plugins. If this is your first time using community plugins, there will be a pop-up. You're just going to click Yes, Browse, Templater, choose it, click Install. You can see at the top right, it's going to say Install Plugin, successfully installed. And I would advise you just to always read through the plugin notes because there's valuable resources that you can later use. But this says what this plugin does. Now you've installed it, you still need to enable it. So we're going to enable it, and Bob's your uncle. If you go to Options, you can see that under Community Plugins, you have a new plugin called Templater. And this is where you can specify where your templates folders are. You can add other settings, but we also don't need to stress about that. So the next thing we need to do is go back to our dashboard and add a templates folder. So we're just going to click Exit. Come to your left-hand side. I'm going to say New Folder. I'm just going to call it Templates. I'm going to go back to Settings. Go all the way down to Community Plugins, Templater, and here we need to specify our template folder location. Files in this folder will be available as templates. Okay, so we are going to choose templates. So let's get into creating an actual template. What I want to do next is speed run through a different example. So I want to run through a people's template. So this is if you meet somebody new and you want to keep a catalog of them, you can easily use this template in order to fill in the structure for that specific person. And then you can keep details on that person, like when their birthdays are, link to their LinkedIn, things like that. But I think it's a very good way to showcase what goes into templates and tie it to a more understandable subject than meetings. So in order to create a template, going to go to Obsidian, you're going to say create new or Control N, and we're going to call it people template, press enter. So there's two types of metadata. There's the normal YAML front-end meta, which is specified like this, dash, 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 enter, enter, dash, 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 anything between these lines. You can have more space in between as well. Anything between these lines, if it's at the beginning of the note, Obsidian reads as being YAML or metadata. And within this metadata, you can specify anything. There's no set standard of these are the fields that you have to use. You can create your own. So an example of a couple of fields would be created date, updated date, type, tags. So this is pretty intuitive. And we can see that, okay, created date is on which date this note is created, which date this note is updated. We can say what type of note is this, and then we can give tags to this note. So you can see it's nothing specific to the person that you're actually going to capture. It's more information about this note that you are going to create. And that is what metadata is. Metadata is data about data. So this little piece is data about this specific page. So if we go through an example of what this might look like, let's say we create a table and we want to have a table where we can see all the people that we have met and cataloged in our PKM system. Let's call it people. We're going to do a little bit of a dataview query. Let's just make sure that you have dataview installed, settings. So you're going to go to community plugins, go to community plugins, browse, and search for dataview. So mine is already installed, but you'll have that option and you'll see something pop up at the top right of your screen saying it's installed successfully. Afterwards, you're just going to say enable. And if you exit and go back to your settings, you can see that dataview is under community plugins now. There's just a couple of extra settings. The default templates is not compatible with the template plugin. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to core plugins and we're going to switch off templates. So just deactivate it and specify a dataview query. I'm going to have these three little symbols. Once you tap the third one, it should autocomplete for a line at the bottom. And we're just going to say dataview. I'm going to say table where tains type person. Okay. So let's just have the correct quotes. And say contains instead of contains. Okay, so this is our query. And this query looks through your entire note-taking system and it goes and look for that metadata, which is this little piece. And it goes through every note to see if there is a type metadata field. And within that field, does it equal person? So we have a template. If we say the type is person, this should be reflected in the dataview query. So if you go from editing mode to reading mode, the top right, you can see that, hey, there's our people template. So next thing is inline metadata fields. So we spoke about these little metadata blocks within these dashes has to be at the top of the page. There's another type which is exactly the same, but the formatting is just a little bit different. And it looks something like, let's say we want the date that you met this person. So date met, instead of 1, you're going to have 2. So that's the only difference. And you can have this anywhere in your block of code. And let's say location met. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 metadata fields in our people templates query. Let's just check if it works. Let's say date met 2022 1209. In our dataview query, we can specify that we want to see the date met field as well by just typing it. Let's say we want the location met as well. That is how you specify it. Table with a date met column and a location met column where the type is person. So it's going to go through your whole system and go through every node and check where the type equals person. And if it finds a node with type equals person, it's going to have the node itself, the node name, the date met column, and location met. So 3. So let's check what it looks like. Cool. So here's our table. People template December. So this means nothing because it's just a template. Normally, we don't want the template to show up in these fields. But one way to specify that something is a template is to put it in a templates folder. So we already created a templates folder. If you haven't, you can right click, can't right click, but you can say new folder and you can just call it templates. I'm not going to do it now because I already have a templates folder, and I'm going to move my people template into that templates folder. So you can see it's a little bit indent, and I can close and collapse it. Next thing, go to settings, templater, and template folder location. So here you can just type in the name and it should autocomplete, and just make sure that it is the same name as your templates folder. All good to go. So now that this people template is in our templates folder, it means that we can now use it. Templater knows where to find your templates. And when you meet somebody new, you can actually just retrieve that information very quickly and use the structure. I'm just going to clean up this template a little bit. And obviously, we don't want the date filled in because each date met is going to be different. So we'll keep this like this for now. For the people, we don't want the template to show up. So we can say everything except templates because we don't want our templates to show up here. Okay, now we want to showcase this. I'm just going to create another note under the templates folder, and we're going to call it meeting notes. What we're going to do a little bit later. And I'm doing this so you can see that how to choose a template when you are creating a note. So let's say we're creating a new note because we just met somebody and we call this person Justice. And what you can do is you can either go to the left-hand side where you see Insert Template. You can click there and you can see it pops up a choice of people template or meeting notes template. Then you can choose which one you want to choose. The easier way to do it is to hit Control P on your system, and this opens up the command palette, and then you're just going to start typing templates. And then the first one, insert template, and here you can also just choose. So we're going to choose people's template. So we see it automatically fill out the structure for what we need. We're going to make it a little bit more complicated to automatically fill in the created and updated data for that note. So this is just a way for you to track on which day did you take this note. Normally it's the same as the day that you meet them, but it might be a year after or 2 years after, and you still want to know when you created that note. In order to do that, we're going to go back to the people template. Let's just go to meeting notes and change the name to meeting notes template. Meeting note template. This is not any confusion. The people templates, we want to automatically fill in the dates. So this little piece of code, which when you create the note, it would automatically take the timestamp of the exact time when you created the note, if that makes sense. You're going to have a smaller sign, percentage sign, space, TP, full stop, date, full stop, now, open brackets, quotes, year, dash, month, dash, day, space, and we're going to have another percentage sign and close little brackets that we have. So this is the code that comes with Templater, and as you can see, it basically just takes the current file's date now at the moment of creation in this format. You're going to have exactly the same thing for updated date, and when a new person gets created, this gets converted into an actual date. So let's test this bad boy out. So we're going to create a new note by pressing Control N. We're going to call this Fury. And now we want to insert the template. Again, you need to go to the left hand side, insert template, or you can use hotkeys and you can press Control P, start typing templates. It's going to be the first ones. You can just press enter. You can go up or down arrow key, open templates, and people templates. And great. Here we have the created date and update date. So we are in business. So let's create another person. Let's say Control N for a new note. We're on fire. And we're going to say Control P. Start typing templater. Press enter. Go to people's templates and fire. Okay, date mate. Location mates. So let's go to our people templates table. So if we go to people and we move away from edit view, here's our list of people. It's quite nice, and we're going to apply the same thing for meetings. You can see that date met wasn't filled in for justice yet, so let's fill in justice date met. Justice wasn't part of the template, the original template, so let's just take this out. Control P, template, open insert template modal, go to people template, and we're going to say date met and location met, teams. Then final person, if we go back to our tablet, is Fury. So let's say date met was in the PC, location met was school. This is a complete list of everything we need. We've used people as a speedrunning activity in order to understand three very important concepts. First, templates, which is or resides in our templates folder, metadata, and very simplistic data view queries. So what I mean with templates, we've run through how to put it into a folder. We installed the necessary plugins called Templater. We've disabled the default plugin, and we know how to use them when creating a new note. With metadata, if we go to one of our people called Fury, we learn about YAML front-end matter, which is the metadata at the front of your note, defined between these three little dashes. And we have inline metadata, which does not have to be between dashes. It is specified with 2 colons. And lastly, we touched on data view. So when you go back to our people, you can think of this as our people homepage, because everybody that you're going to meet is going to get populated in here because they have the correct metadata based off our template. And this is a simple query that we wrote. Table, date met, location met from everything except templates, because we didn't want our templates to show up here, where it contains the type. Again, the type that we specified for Fury is person. The type that we specified for Fire is person, where the type equals person. So now that we have that understanding, we can go to the meeting notes. So let's think how we want to structure this. You would want a project. So we have a page for a specific project. within a project, you want to see all your meetings come up. You want to see your tasks come up. So let's start with the meeting note. You can think of people. This is where we come to see all people. The meeting note for project X is where we want to go to see everything related to project X. So let's just close everything down. And let's create a new file. So let's call this project X. We obviously want our name. We want meetings. Let's make this a level 2 heading. Hashtag, space. And we want a table. Yeah. Table from not templates, where type contains type meeting. Just make sure that we have something similar. Dataview table from not templates, where contains type meeting. We want that in quotes. And then we want our to do. I was going to make that a heading. Then we want completed, meaning completed to do or tasks. And this is just where we want to keep track of everything that we managed to complete. I think it's good to have that somewhere visible so you can see that you're at least making progress on something. Now that we have the project structure set up, we want a template for meetings. So luckily we already have a meeting note template in our templates folder. If you don't, navigate to your templates folder and insert a new note called meeting note template or meeting templates. And here for the front end or YAML, we want created date, updated date, we want type meeting. And let's leave the tags here as well. And then for this specific meeting, we want inline metadata fields. So this is just things related to the actual content of this page, where normally this is related to what this note, meaning this piece of paper, what the data says about this piece of data, not the content of the data. So when did we create this piece of paper? When did we update this piece of paper? And this paper, what type is it? It's meeting type. Tags is a little bit in a gray area between content on the page and what is in the page. So we'll just leave tags here for now. But for the inline metadata, how I like to think about it, and your opinion can obviously differ, but this works for me. I want inline metadata to represent content on the paper. So first of all, we want a project. We want participants, colon, and we want a previous meeting to have some type of auditing capabilities or timeline of our meetings. Previous meeting. So it's basically the meeting that led up to this. And what I normally do is I use emails and meetings interchangeably. So I could have an email that I received that is a meeting, because it's a meeting you're having with yourself, essentially, when you work through it. And if there was a meeting that came out of that email, then the email is the previous meeting. Let's create some headings. So we want meeting notes, and we want tasks to do. Okay, so now we have our skeleton. Let's just add a checklist here. So this is basically a little checkbox, little dash, space, open square brackets, and what's complete. The other close square brackets, and you just put a little space in between. So when you go to reading view at the top right, or you can click Control E. then that is not correct. There we go. You just need to have another space afterwards, and it would recognize it as a little to-do block. Then you see you can check and uncheck it. All right. Okay, we have our meeting skeleton. So how do we go about creating a meeting? Well, everything is set up. So let's just start creating meeting notes. So first meeting that we want to create, we have our meeting note. So let's jump right into it. Okay, create new file, meeting 1.1. We click Control P to open the command palette. Start typing templater, open, and now we want meeting note template. And there we see, cool, it works. We want to auto-complete the created date, updated date. So let's go back to our meeting notes template. First of all, we want to auto-fill in the created and updated date. So close, smaller as, percentage sign, TP, which stands for, I have no idea, but it stands for this note, this paper, I guess. TP date dot now. We're going to open up our brackets. We're going to have quotes. Year, month, day, hour, colon, and let's make it smaller, Not sure if that has an impact. Then go to the end, space, percentage sign, and then we have a bigger as sign. We want exactly the same thing for our updated date. And let's quickly talk about how to get a heading. Let's say for some reason you want a heading that is exactly the same as the note's name. In our case, if you have the standard Obsidian installation, you won't need it. But for other people that don't want the meeting notes to be all the way at the top, but to be here, for instance, or here, we also need some of this type of code. So let's create it. As always, we open it up, percentage sign, TP, this paper, file.title, and it just retrieves the title of this note and pastes it here. Let's see how this works in action. So let's delete this, meeting 1, Control P, template, enter meeting note. Great. So we have created date, we have updated date, and it even filled in the name of this note. But like I said, for us, we don't want that, but just so you know how to do it in the future. And let's delete that. Go back to our meeting 1.1, and one final time, Control P, templater, and meeting note. So this is our first meeting. This project, it's actually going to be reference to the actual project note. So in our case, it's going to be project X. Participants, let's have Fury, our main G, and let's have Justice, our main GGs. So obviously you want to reference the note to Fury, and then we want to reference the note of Justice. We have no previous meetings because this is our first meeting. Meeting notes. This is our kick-off meeting for Projector XR, and toss to do set up another meeting. Yeah. So congratulations, you made your first meeting notes. What I tend to do, but we'll do it with the next meeting, is add the date in front of the meeting, just so it's easier to know when the meeting took place, because we always think chronologically, or most of us do. But for the next meeting, we'll add that to the meeting note name. So let's create another meeting. Let's say we had a follow-up meeting. So create new file. This time I'm just going to add the date and meeting 1.2. Great. Control P. Look for templater and click on meeting notes. Great. As always, we're going to refer to project X. Participants. going to be footy. And this time we have our wonderfully named person called Fire. Fire! And previous meeting. Now we can reference the previous meeting. Let's say task to do. Make yet another meeting, my good sir, madam. So now that we have this, we have 2 meetings, but we have nowhere to go and have an overview of them because our project X is not folded in yet. Obviously, it's going to appear here, but what if we have other projects? And all of the other projects' meetings is also going to appear. So we need to change our dataview query just a little bit. And we're going to add an AND condition. Before we change our dataview query, let's just go back to the project X and just see if it works or not. And if this project X pull in any of the meetings that we've created. And at the moment, we've only created this meeting 1.1. Control E or go to the top right and click current view editing and change it to reading mode. And we see nothing gets picked up, even though we do specify return a table from everything except for the templates folder, which is this folder, where it contains the type meeting. When we go to meetings, meeting 1.1, we see that the type is meeting. The reason why it's not being picked up is because of this capital M. And when we go back to our project X, we specify it as lowercase m. So one way to get around this is to say, so one way to get around this issue is to make this type that we're looking for lowercase. So before the type, we're going to start typing lower, open brackets, after type, closing brackets. And now we're saying, hey, return where we have the type, that's all lowercase, is equal to meetings, which is all lowercase. So that essentially would go look at this meeting 1.1. We'll go look at the type, metadata or YAML, and it will take the string that we've inserted here, which is meeting, and change it all to lowercase and compare it to this meeting. So now if we go back to reading mode, you can see, cool, it pops up and we have 2 meetings. But the problem here is that it's pulling in all the meetings, even if the meetings is not related to project X. To show this, let's go to this 2022-12-10 meeting, and let's just remove this project. Let's say it's project Y instead of project X. And let's head back to our project X overview. It's still showing project Y meetings. And that is obviously something we don't want. We want a different page for project Y. And to only filter to projects or meetings related to project X, we have to manipulate the dataview query just a little bit. To do this, we are going to insert an AND condition. We say where the project is equal to. So if you go back to meeting 1.1, we want the project where the project is equal to project X. So 2 open square brackets, 2 closing square brackets, and you can have this in sense where Obsidian would tell you which note are you referring to, and we're referring to this note, project X. Press enter, and now if we go back to reading mode, it should work. Cool. So we successfully filtered out meeting 1.2, which relates to project Y that doesn't exist yet, and only showing project X. So we're happy. For our next trick, we want to show the to-dos. So this is the to-dos from all the meetings we had in project X. And if we go to meeting 1.1, which relates to project X, you can see that there's a task to do, set up another meeting. And we want this task to show on our project X landing page. So we go to editing mode, and we're going to write some more dataview queries. So just follow along. Dataview, remember, it has to be small letters, otherwise it's not going to work. So for instance, if you have a capital D here, it won't register as dataview. So instead of typing table here, because we don't want a table, we want a list of tasks. We're going to say task. And we're going to specify the where condition, where the project is equal to this project, project X, and not completed. So this little exclamation mark tells Obsidian, hey, from this list of tasks from project X, return or give me a list of these tasks that's not completed. And if you go to reading mode, we can see, cool, set up another meeting. Now, if we go back to meeting 1.2 and we change the project back to project X, and we add a couple of to-dos. This is a new to-do. And we go back to project X. We expect to see these little tasks appear in project X homepage. So let's go back to project X, and here we see all the to-dos. The next thing, we want to see all the completed, because how we structured it is in our data view, we only see tasks that is not completed, meaning it's not checked off. So as soon as we check off one of these, so for meeting 1.1, we have set up another meeting. So as soon as we either check it off here or go to project X and check it off here, it disappears. Give it time. There we go. So you can still see it in project 1.1. That is just crossed out, meaning it's done. You can obviously change the settings if you don't like the cross out. But in project X, we can't see that that task was ever a thing. But we want to see all the completed tasks that we managed to do. So that's quite simple. We go to edit mode, and we just copy our dataview query to completed. And the only thing we're going to change is just remove this exclamation mark that indicates not completed. So instead of not completed, you're just going to remove that, and it's going to say where it is completed. Now, if we go back to reading mode, we can see, hey, we've got a log of everything that we wanted to do. So this is quite nice. Let's take it one step further, and in this table, just add a meeting summary. So in this table, we probably want to see the actual file or meeting name. We want to see a quick summary. We want to see the date that it happened. But normally my convention is to add the date in front of the meeting. But in data view, which is something we won't cover today, you can apply filters. So let's say you want to see all the meetings that you have had in the last month with these participants. You can do that, but that's going to be a later video. So let's flesh out this table a little bit more. So meeting 1.1, we want to add to our template. Let's just add a summary. So let's go to our meeting note template, and let's add a summary. This, it's the template, so we don't want to fill anything in. We just want to specify the metadata that would be in the blueprint every time we create a new meeting. So when you go to meeting 1.1, to meeting 1.1, let's just add that summary, because we've created this meeting before we updated the meeting note template. So let's just say, this meeting was our first. Cool. So to showcase this in another meeting, let's just create a new note. So Control N. Let's call this 2022 12 23 Project X meeting 1.3, something like that. Press Enter, Control P to open the command palette. Start typing in templater, click on templater, and we want not a people template, we want a meeting note template. Cool. And now we have this automatically filled in. We have the correct date. So let's just say this is the third meeting in the series. And let's say the participants is Justice. and the project is obviously project X, and the previous meeting would be meeting 1.2. Cool. Meeting notes, third, blah, blah, blah. The task to do, blah, blah. Great. Now, if you go to Project X, just think about what you assume to see in our Project X overview. What we assume to see is all 3 meetings, all the tasks, one task that's checked off, and that's about it. Cool. We have our meetings not in chronological order, but we'll change that as well. Let's go to Edit View. When we specify a table, it automatically comes with one column that references the note, but it has a default name of file. If you want to change that, we need to say table without ID, and that just, it's not going to return anything because it has no columns to return. So we need to specify the columns. So let's specify the columns. We'll say file.link. So that's just the name of the file that you can click on and go to that note as meeting. So if you go to reading mode, we can see that we changed the name successfully. Meeting, we have 3 meetings. Next thing we want to add is if you go to meeting 1.1, just looking at the metadata, we want the creator date, and we want the summary, and we want the participants, and the previous meeting. Why not? So this is just the columns that we're specifying. So we want the created date. Let me just make sure I have it correct. Cool. Created date. Then we want participants. Let me just make sure I spelled it correctly. Participants. Great. And we want the summary, and we want previous meeting. Just remember, it needs to be spelled exactly the same. So previous meeting, summary, great. So let's check what it looks like. So now we have meeting, created date, participant, summary, previous meeting. And let's just sort it by created date. So at the end, just going to say sort by created date. So this is something you have to type out, sort, and then we specify the metadata field that we want to sort by, and then we're going to say descending. Great. Now we have meeting 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 in chronological order. And here we can see, if you look at this row, we have meeting 1.2, we have the creator date, we have the participants, and we can click on it to go to the participants, and then we have the previous meeting. So it's a nice little way to say, okay, cool, this meeting came from the previous meeting. So something in this meeting led to us having this meeting. And that's everything you need to know. So now you have a fully functioning meeting note system. One thing I would just encourage you to do is just add another folder called meetings, and then just add all the meetings into that folder so that everything is just sorted a little bit better and it doesn't clutter up your panel on the left hand side. You can even have another folder called projects, and we have project X, and then we can have another folder called people. And this is just across all the projects. We just dump all the people in here. And now we have a clean system. Hope this was valuable to you. And as always, please don't like and don't subscribe. I would hate that. And see you next time. Strength and honor.